Priority for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right. Us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on this beautiful Monday morning, on Boxing Day, day after Christmas. We're live here on WYSL until 2 p.m. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000, or leave your comments online. Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson page, or the Kevin Wilson Twitter. Wherever you listen today, appreciate y'all being here. And, for those of you who hadn't heard the news last week, very soon we're not going to be in this time spot anymore. You'll hear a different person in this hour. And luckily, Larry Sharp will still be on Tuesdays at 1 p.m., but I will no longer be in this spot. So we're hopeful that, we're going to continue A Free Solution in other ways, either online or in a different spot. So once we finalize the details, we'll, of course, make that announcement. Hopefully, tentatively 8 p.m. Thursday is where it looks like it's going to be. So we are... we're hopeful that we'll still be on WYSL that time. Plus, again, the online streaming. We're still going to do stuff, right? We're still going to talk about important issues of the day from a libertarian perspective, and again, hoping to have other folks join the conversation more frequently too. People like Tim O'Connor and Andrew Hollister, hoping to have them part of the show a lot more often, and so it should be good. But again, you won't be hearing me at this spot starting in January. So this is my penultimate episode at this time. But we'll be continuing in a different capacity. Thursdays, 8 p.m. is the plan. And, but so got 2 more episodes left in this time slot. So, I'm going to try to do a couple things with this episode. So I want to talk about in this episode, some things that maybe I'm pessimistic about, right? Things that, like, in the liberty movement and conservative movement in general, like I would like to see go better. And that must have been Wednesday's episode talking a lot about what I'm optimistic about. What is going on in the world that is going well? Why should we be optimistic about our future despite everything we talk about? And I know a lot of this show and a lot of politics generally is negative, and because there is a lot of bad stuff going on in government, but I want to make sure I focus on the good stuff too that happens, because a lot of life happens outside of politics, outside of policy, and there are good things going on. And it's wild once you escape the bounds even a little bit of government and politics. There are great things happening. There are people working to accomplish excellent things in the world too, and I'm generally optimistic about the future. But today I want to talk about some things that I'm maybe a little bit more pessimistic about, and specifically, like how do we overcome a mindset that there isn't anything that we can do to change politics. And I run into this a lot especially in libertarian circles, right? You kind of get beat down by, 2-party politics. You get beat down by, depending on how far down the rabbit hole you're going. Some folks get beat down by kind of conspiratorial thinking too. And you start to consume that so much, you start to think that, like, it's hopeless to get out of that. And I want to do 2 things with this now. And one is that, to kind of get you to examine that sort of mindset. Like what really is happening out in the world? Like, how do we discern truth and know when the things that we're talking about, even on this show or or just anything else that you're consuming, how do we know that that's true? Why is it important that what we hear and what we listen to? How do we evaluate whether or not that's true? Why is that important to be able to do that? It seems like it should be obvious, but it's not always very clear for folks. And again, how can we work towards knowing what problems that we can solve and work towards a better world, work towards that optimistic vision of society that I generally have, right? Like there's again a lot of good going on in the world. There's a lot of things you can do to make the world a better place, and And sitting here always thinking about politics, not being able to act on that in an effective way, can be demoralizing, and it can drag you down. And so we'll talk about that sort of thinking, right? Again, because there is a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, right? Like it's wild to me. And I talk about this with Tim a lot when him and I are on Thursdays, is that there's so many legitimately bad things that government does. Like conspiracy theories kind of drive me nuts because they're the evidence of certain things happening in so many situations is so tenuous. Like it drives me nuts to worry about that stuff when there's other things in the world that are bad, that do need to be fixed, that sometimes can be fixed. And instead there's a lot of folks who worry about shadowy figures who control every aspect of your life, from the UN down to your local government, and that's not generally how things work. And so we'll talk a little bit about the nature of like this type of thinking, right? Like you end up starting to think like, okay, there's bad stuff going on. There's stuff that's unexplained going on. You wonder if there are groups of people coordinating to control whatever aspect of society that you're worried about, media, government, whatever, right? I something I always try to think about is, like a lot of these times I, I see people in government and I don't think competent person who's ruling the world. I think someone who is barely smart enough to get into some of these positions and is trying to do what they can to be just good enough to keep getting elected office, right? I don't see that same uh, competence in the ruling class that many folks see. I see average people trying to do what they can to keep their jobs, just like anyone else. And that's the first part I think, is to think that there are elites who, I know there's some people who think they're better, but they're really not. They're not any better. They're people, are just people just like us. That's that's the nature of it, right? And so you start to think about this and you start to wonder, like who's really pulling the strings, who's doing this stuff, who's running our lives, and the answer is that no one's really running anything. Most of the time, it's just people bumbling around, doing their thing, trying to do different things to stay in power, and taking away that power in your own mind of the people who rule you is a good step in thinking, well, I'm competent. I can do things. I can make my life better right now. I can make life better for me, for my family, for my community. There are things that you can do. And so, but you start to think that, you start to see that, and you start to say, well, maybe people aren't talking about some real stories. And you see some real life evidence of this happening too. It never lasts for very long, right? Like, but you see like a lot of people not wanting to talk about the Hunter Biden story. It's all the FBI maybe tipping Twitter off, Twitter pulling that stuff down temporarily, and then it going back up. It doesn't usually last very long, but you do see folks in government who will try to do some nefarious things to try to maybe cover up a story that they don't want to cover up, but never really lasts very long. And it's important in the society that we do speak truth to power in these situations, that you don't get in situations like what they end up with in the Soviet Union, where people were terrified to speak truth to power. And luckily, we're at a point in society where we do seek truth, where we do seek honesty, where we do seek trying to do the right thing in these situations. And a conspiracy to hide something does not last very long. But because some people fall to that, even for a little bit of time, like Twitter, like CNN, like any of these things, you start to think, well, I can't trust these folks at all. I can't trust what comes out of the government. I can't trust what comes out of mainstream media, which is kind of a loaded term because there's a lot of media that goes in the mainstream media. I can't trust social media companies, etc. But again, the thing to keep in mind is what I said in the beginning of this, is that all of these groups, they're not in lockstep. They are just a group of people of varying levels of competence trying to do things to keep their job. And they have different motivations. They have different level of compliance with different requests to talk about something or not talk about something. Again, this is why conspiracies often fall apart, is because most people are either not going to go along because they have a moral objection, or they want to talk about it, or any other complicated motivation when you get large groups of people. Because again, the government is made up of thousands and thousands of people not operating in lockstep, but with their own different motivations, moralities, and everything else that goes on in their life. Again, it's all just, when you get down to it, it's all just individuals. All right, so when we come back, we'll keep talking about that. We'll keep talking about, okay, if we've established that it's just people running things, what do we do next? How do we discern what those people are saying in terms of trying to distill some semblance of truth? Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Hey, this is Kevin Wilson, host of A Free Solution. You ever needed a tool for just one project, but didn't want to spend the cash for something you'd use just once or twice? Well, there's a new tool library in Rochester where you can borrow just the thing you need instead of buying a new one. It's called the Tool Shed from the Southeast Area Coalition, and membership starts at just $25 a year. Use it for home projects or to support your business. Learn more and become a member at seektoolshed.org. That's SEAC toolshed.org.
Only available in the WISL store at WISL1040.com. Official top quality tees, hoodies, and coffee mugs depicting the colorful WISL logo or the already famous Mount Worstmore line of merch depicting Mount Rushmore style are for worst presidents. Of course, you know who is front and center up on that mountain. WISL official items make perfect gifts, or they're a great way for you to make a personal statement. Locally produced and sold only in the WISL store at WISL1040.com.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today. Thanks again for joining us here on this wonderful Monday afternoon. Nice Boxing Day afternoon, chilly afternoon. But we're live here on WYSL until 2 p.m. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or leave your comments online as well. Appreciate all of y'all being here. And we got some comments from Patricia, who says, my free solution is teach your children well. Yeah, 100%. And and then just small peaceful steps are not working. Rage Against the Machine ? I'm sad you're all leaving, but we'll try to follow you wherever you all go. Thank you, Patricia. Appreciate you. Again, we're still going to be on Thursdays. 8 p.m. is the spot that we're lining up, and we'll of course do some lives on Facebook too, and again hoping to have Tim O'Connor more involved, hoping to have Andrew Hollister more involved as well, maybe some other folks. We're going to make it fun, we're going to make it informative, we're going to have a good time. So on to and just kind of to address this, I think small peaceful steps are necessary, right? Like that's how we build a good society. It's not big things, it's how do we act better in our day-to-day lives to make a small difference for us and for our community. That's how most people are going to go about life. Again, I know there's extraordinary moments out there, but most people are going to be better and make their lives, their families, their communities better with small steps. And I want to talk a little bit more about that at the end. First, I was talking about like the nature of like the mainstream media and how like this kind of thinking ends up getting built, right? Because again, there's good reason to be skeptical of the mainstream media. There's good reason to be skeptical of the government. There's good reason to be skeptical of anyone who's trying to present an extraordinary claim, right? And again, I don't even get things right all the time. I've been wrong about stuff on this show before, and I tried to talk about it and address it, and try to be better and try to be more cautious when I present something that maybe I didn't have the best evidence for. But there's kind of a flip side thinking to that where you end up thinking just the opposite. Like, well, because you've established that the media isn't always going to be trustworthy, or the government isn't always going to be trustworthy, therefore everything they say is a lie. I'll tell you, when you do that, though, you're letting the mainstream media and the government do your thinking for you. If you're just doing the opposite of what they say, you're not really thinking for yourself. And as I talked about in the last segment, the government, the mainstream media, which again is made up of whatever companies you want to define it, is CNN mainstream media, is MSNBC, is Fox News, is OAN mainstream media. And I don't know, right? Like, I'm pretty clearly like a small radio host on an independent station, but again, I would like to think that I'm getting some people to think about some things some of the times, right? But it's all just, again, when you get down to it, it's all just people with different motivations, with different levels of scrutiny that they apply to evidence before they present a story to their viewers or listeners. And to me, like how I end up evaluating what someone in government says or what someone in media says is, what is their track record for presenting truthful information? Are they constantly just reporting on something that fits the narrative to present the political situation that they want? Or are they, sometimes presenting information that isn't convenient for them, that sometimes complicates their narrative, that sometimes makes things difficult to promote their political ideology or their political tribe? Are they willing to speak truth to power when it's their own side who is presented with evidence that maybe their ideology isn't working in this situation? And that's an important part about being able to evaluate anything that gets said in media. Again, what I say, because again, I'm upfront. I'm coming at this from a libertarian perspective, and sometimes subconsciously I could pull punches for that. Like you all got to be aware of that. And anyone you hear on any show, you just got to be aware that people are coming at things from different perspectives, and you should evaluate that accordingly. And so, so you end up with this mindset where, again, to me, it's all individuals, different motivations. There's some journalists I know, if they put something out there that it's probably going to be pretty good, they probably checked it, and I still might be skeptical of it if it's an extraordinary claim that doesn't fit my worldview, but I know that they're probably pretty good. And there's other folks who will absolutely put whatever propaganda nonsense out there on behalf of the government, or just the opposite of that, right? They're not going to check that stuff. But if you get into this thinking that everything the mainstream media says is a lie, and you must believe the opposite of that, and you have people who are out there saying, well, I oppose the mainstream media, so believe me, you can only trust me. You got to be skeptical of those folks too. Because here's the thing, they have their own motivations as well. They have their own motivations to keep you entertained, to sell stuff to you, to try to feel like they're offering something special and unique that no one else is doing. And you'll see this sometimes when people make extraordinary claims that aren't being reported in the mainstream media, sometimes because there's no evidence of that thing. And if their counter evidence is, well, no one else is talking about this and the mainstream media just wants to cover, and they're not talking about the evidence of the thing, and that evidence doesn't come from a good place that you can trust, you should be skeptical of that. Not sometimes it happens. Sometimes it ends up being true. There's some stuff that, like, we found out with COVID, with like the lab theory, right? It was always kind of plausible in the beginning, but everyone's like, no, if you're talking about the lab theory stuff, you're conspiracy theorist. And later on, it started to be, well, yeah, maybe there's some truth to that. It does happen, but a lot of times those extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And you can get in this trap of people who make extraordinary claims and will say, well, you have to believe me. The mainstream media isn't going to talk about it. You are special for knowing this information when no one else does, when no one else sees it. You are special because you are standing out in this world, because all the mainstream media either refuses to report on it or doesn't see it yet. And all your other friends, all your family members, they don't see this stuff. It can feel empowering to think that way, that you've unlocked some secret knowledge, and only this particular person who's telling you these things on social media or wherever you're consuming this information is unlocking this special information for you. But what might actually be happening is that they're prioritizing entertainment or novelty over the truth. And unfortunately, that does happen, folks. Again, and it's tempting. when you're doing this, right? Like if you can find something that's breaking, that's new, that no one else has discovered yet, that does actually work to change, either your local community or the world, right? Like that can feel huge. That could feel special. It feels like you're part of something cool that no one else is part of yet. And we love that feeling of being unique, of being the hero. But again, keep in mind, what are people trying to accomplish that? What are people trying to do? Maybe there's a reason that people aren't talking about this. I think there's a story that happened recently, and this is like more mainstream. Like I think it might have been Tucker Carlson or someone else talking about how like there's evidence that the CIA killed JFK, right? And no one else is talking about this. All right, well, like the reason why no one else is talking about this is because the source is kind of dubious, and there's not a lot of good evidence that this is what actually happened. And what's wild to me is there's all sorts of ridiculously shady stuff that the CIA has done. Like look at like the MK Ultra program is real. That stuff really happened. Like the CIA has done just some absolutely ridiculous, heinous things in its existence. And my only like sort of conspiracy with the CIA is that again, there's real bad stuff that happened, is that they sometimes like that there's these like other wild conspiracies that go on out there, because it makes it lumps in the real awful stuff that they did. It lumps it in with like the ridiculous, Bigfoot level stuff, right? That's the one like there's a whole South Park joke about that, about how like the 9/11 conspiracy theorists were actually paid by the government to make the government seem more competent than it really was. And that's, I jokingly say that that's my only conspiracy. But again, there's real awful stuff out there. It does really exist. But if you're going to make an extraordinary claim about that stuff and you have only one person talking about it, and they're not presenting the evidence in full, or it comes from a place that person may not have actually had the insider knowledge to have that information, all I'm saying is be skeptical of it. And sometimes this happens, right? Like, and this happened with, whether the NSA was like tracking your conversations, right? So you had like Edward Snowden, who worked for the NSA, who revealed that information to Glenn Greenwald and, presented all of the evidence that they were tracking keystrokes, that they were tracking cell phone metadata, that they were in using it against Americans with a broad-based FISA warrant. Some of that stuff ended up being legit, but their extraordinary claim was presented with extraordinary evidence, that there had to be a lot of stuff to go into this. And again, there's a lot of incentive for people who are in my position, who could make their show grow and expand by having by saying that there's extraordinary evidence and no one else is reporting on it just because they're scared or afraid, and you're a better special person for believing it. That's not always true. And so that's mostly what I want you to take away with this segment, is like, be skeptical of what I say, be skeptical of what everyone says when they make these claims, because it ends up being really important. It ends up being really important for what you think you can do in this world. It ends up being really important for anchoring our society to some level of truth, because it is important that we have some basis on discerning and figuring out what is true. When you get to like a postmodernist mindset of like the truth not actually mattering much, it can deteriorate a society really quick. It can deteriorate free markets, capitalism. It can send you into a mode of arbitrary authoritarianism very quickly. And it can go either side. It can be a right-wing thing. It can be a left-wing thing. There's no exclusivity on what ideology ends up driving this. It's just a matter of, if you start to no longer have a way for discerning truth from fiction, your society's in real trouble. And we're at a point where I see some of this stuff in my own movement, but elsewhere as well, in the left-wing movement. And it's so critical that we get back to this, that we figure out, well, how do we talk about what the actual facts are, and then figure out what the good solutions are? How do we figure out, how do we get to making a society a better place? Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Be back in just a few. Talk to you soon.
Pray for the USA. AM 1040 Avon Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, and FM 95.5 Spencerport.
Here's the latest forecast from the News 10 NBC Weather Center for tonight. Mostly cloudy, just a few light flurries or a snow shower, a little dusting out there. Still cold, temps in the teens and 20s. On Tuesday, one more chilly day in the 20s with a couple of flurries out there. Wednesday, we start to ease out of the deep freeze back near 40, and then much milder weather later this week headed towards New Year's Eve. I'm Rich Cornelia, WYSL.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
Your unusual gift headquarters is Springwater Amish Workshop, 7936 Mill Street, Route 15, Springwater. Gifts handmade by local artisans like the perfect pitch wind chime. Explore the selection of Amish crafted solid wood furniture. Give handmade gifts from Amish artisans. Vegetable bins, trash bins, rustic or refined all trees, magazine racks, rocking chairs, gliders. Pick from a collection of wood charcuterie serving boards for you to display your decadent holiday spread. Don't forget your outdoors friends. Quirky gourd birdhouses, vinyl post, or wooden animal or bird-shaped bird feeders make winter fun for bird watchers. Christmas is the best time to purchase outdoor furniture pieces of either wood or poly at Springwater Amish Workshop. There's a good selection available, and they'll store your purchase till spring. Great gift suggestions? How about a lighthouse, windmill, or wishing well? Remember, Springwater Amish Workshop sheds have the best warranty in the business, reasonable pricing that includes delivery within a 40-mile radius of Springwater. Open Monday through Friday 9 to 5, Saturday 9 to 3. SpringwaterAmishWorkshop.com or call 585-669-9710.
Best wishes for a Merry Christmas and a joyful and safe winter driving season from Victor Chevrolet. Now, lease a 2022 Chevy Trailblazer LT all-wheel drive for just $319 a month for 39 months.
$2,500 cash or trade required.
Get the cold weather safety and capability of a 2022 Chevy Silverado Custom LTD Crew Cab for just $399 a month for 39 months.
$2,500 cash or trade at closing.
And then there's a 22 Chevy Equinox all-wheel drive LS for just $289 a month for 39 months.
$2,500 cash or trade equity at closing.
And don't forget, Victor Chevrolet has an unbeatable pre-owned selection. Whether you drive a Chevy or not, trust your vehicle to our Chevy Certified Service Department. Come see how easy it is to do business with us. Find new roads at Victor Chevrolet, Route 96 in Victor.
Visit VictorChevrolet.com.
These lease deals include returning lessee rebate. All factory rebates, incentives, and discounts are applied. Security deposit is waived. 10,000 mile allowance per year. 25 cents each additional mile. Must have lease and household. Tier 1 credit approval required. Lessee responsible for repair and maintenance. Conditions apply. Get details at dealer.
I'm Marisa Geithner, President and CEO of Heritage Christian Services. A new year brings a sense of renewal and possibility. As you consider your end-of-year giving opportunities, we'd be blessed if you would keep us in mind. Heritage Christian Services has been supporting people with intellectual and developmental disabilities for close to 40 years. We support people to reach for possibilities and to achieve what matters most to them. Our always essential staff members are the bedrock of that mission. Would you consider supporting our work with a donation? Your gift will go a long way towards supporting wage increases for our valued staff and towards renovations, which will help the people we support to age in place with dignity. Visit heritagechristianservices.org/donate to make a contribution.
Are you cold in your home? Pick up the phone and call Wise Home Energy at 270-5836. Don't be cold in your home. Pick up the phone, call 270-5836. Wise Home Energy has helped thousands of people get millions in grants and rebates to make their homes much warmer. So don't be cold in your home. Pick up the phone. Call Wise Home Energy at 270-5836 today.
Wise Home Energy is a participating contractor in the Home Performance with Energy Star program.
Livingston County Pizza Company and Gluten-Free Bakery has a great deal on Tuesdays. A large 4-topping pizza for $18, regular or gluten-free. Call 226-9575. Open Tuesday through Sunday. Livingston County Pizza Company and Gluten-Free Bakery in Avon.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today. Thanks again for joining us here on this wonderful Monday afternoon. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Get your calls in while you have a chance. Again, this is my second to last episode in this time spot. Now, moving the Thursdays 8 p.m., we won't be live on the radio anymore. Again, we'll try to do some streaming online. So some folks who are fans of the show always love you guys participating. There'll still be some back and forth there. But again, we are streaming live. For those of you who aren't following me yet, make sure you do that on the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, also streaming on the Kevin Wilson page on Facebook and the Kevin Wilson Twitter account at Kevin ROC. And we'll get to one of these comments on YouTube as well. To Patricia, who says, you and I could be standing next to each other during a crazy event and may see it differently. When we talk, others could think it was two different events. Point of view is key. And I suppose there's some truth to that, right? But at the end of the day, there is an objective fact. There is an objective point of view of like something happened, right? Like an event happened, and like what the significance of that event is, what the causes of that event is, might be debatable. But there does need to be a way to discern a set of facts in a situation. Point of view, because there's this thing that happens. Usually I hear it on the left, but I'll hear it on the right, where people will talk about how like kind of the anecdotal story ends up being elevated above like statistical evidence, right? And this will happen in left and right, but an anecdotal story will kind of rise above, and they'll say like, well, you can't dismiss like my personal experience, right? And no, like that's an important point of view that contributes to the whole totality of truth, but it is not the end all be all. It's not the end of the discussion of like, this is my experience and it was valid, and therefore that is how this historical event should be interpreted. I remember my history professor in college talking about how she had a person in her class when she was like a grad student talking about how there wasn't really food shortages during World War II, that there wasn't like the rationing of the stuff. And her, apparently this person's family didn't really experience that in the way that many others did. And, she was trying to explain to her class, well, no, that's still something that happened. That's still something that like much of the country experienced. There was like rationing of some food goods for good or bad, but like that was a thing that happened and we can see that. And this person's like, no, I don't remember. It didn't happen. And so, yeah, point of view can be helpful. It can contribute to the overall like sense of what happened and how people acted and what their motivations were in an incident. But like, at the end of the day, like there's still some objective truth out there. And I always think of that meme that was going on for a while where there's two people debating whether or not there's a 6 or a 9 painted on the ground. And, you're like, oh, well, like from each point of view, it looks like they could both be right. But the thing is, they're not both right. One person is right. You look around and say, is this in front of a parking spot? What are the other numbers around it? If this is numbering a building or a spot in a parking lot or a, whatever it is, like a number on a field, whatever that 6 or that 9 is, someone is actually right in that situation. They're not both valid because they're looking at a narrow point of view, two perspectives on what is objectively a thing that was made for a purpose. And Patricia goes on to say, you and I see a rabbit take my eagle. You see a mastery of the eagle. I see the horror of the rabbit. Point of view is vital in these discussions. I'm like, well, yes, but at the end of the day, what we have to both agree, again, we can agree with whether or not that's good or bad, or, or whether or not we feel bad for that's all in the realm of subjective. But the objective thing is that a rabbit takes an eagle. Again, motivations, good, bad, the nature of predators, whatever, right? Like that's that's part of what is going to add to that human experience of debating whether or not what you saw was good, bad, or neutral. But my point is that there is some objective truth out there, and that trying to find that objective truth matters. Now, I think of situations like there's a scientist in the Soviet Union. Lysenko was his name, and just absolutely refused to think of like plants in terms of of genetics and of all these sorts of things, and he ended up implementing his ideologically pure agricultural theories in the Soviet Union in a way that ended up killing many people because he felt like that the plants should be cooperating more, right? Like that's a gross oversimplification of what he did, but the ideology obscured the truth. But the truth actually matters, and it doesn't matter if that gets in the way of your ideology. That matters, and you could see some other patterns in fascist countries too. You could see it in Nazi Germany, where like the truth of how Jewish people interacted with society, of how other people that they didn't like interact with society, and their impact on the health of German society, their German state, how people would lie about this stuff, that the government would lie about this stuff, that the Nazis would lie about this stuff, and would get people to no longer accept objective truth, that they would only accept the truth from their point of view. But there was an objective truth out there. There was an objective truth about how people interacted with one another, and whether or not they're interacting as groups or as individuals, and what that impact on society was. And in order to, gain power for themselves, they manipulated that. So this sort of manipulation can happen in all sorts of ways. And, I talk about this, and I know Tim kind of gives me some grief when I'm much like, I think that most people most of the time do intend to do good, right? Most people most of the time are just trying to do the right thing. And, they're trying to make a better society, and they're trying to, be the best person that can be most of the time. Again, not all the time. There are good people who do bad things. There are bad people who do good things. There are, in fact, bad people out there who are trying to accumulate power for totally selfish, psychopathic reasons. And that's but that's not most people. Most people they think that they are trying to create a better society. And in fact, that some of the worst folks out there will justify evil acts because they think that they're doing something good. And again, it doesn't matter what they're seeing from their point of view. There's some objective truth to what is actually happening. Whether or not there's an evil act that people think can justify a greater good is dangerous. Most people are acting like that, though. Most people are trying to act in that way. And so my point with all this is, again, just looking at point of view is only one part of it. Looking at motivations is one part of it. But finding the truth does matter. Finding the truth matters for the people who were starving in the Soviet Union. Find the truth of regardless of what ideology they wanted to be true, the truth of what happens in those fields matters. And the truth of what happens anywhere matters. Like they moving into like a postmodernist mindset where all truth is relative becomes dangerous. Like your point of view might not be as valid as any other person's point of view. And you can end up with these situations where like, well, nothing's really true. And, I'll just like make the truth that feels good and convenient for me. And that's a dangerous mindset to be in, because again, you open yourself up to being manipulated. You open up other people to being manipulated as well. And it's having some set of like objective truth matters for like the society that we built around us, for the good things, like from accounting, right? Like we agree on the truth of what these numbers mean and why it matters, and what is the objective truth of how your company is doing for those purposes. We agree that truth has to be important for us to be able to do business effectively for one another. We agree that the truth ought to be important for, how do we raise our kids well? How do we feed our families? How do we, interact with one another in a way that we can build trust? So all that really does matter. Like, we can't just accept that, oh, well, the truth is what I make of it, that you can't trust anyone else anytime, and that you can only trust me. No, that's a way of thinking that leads down to the road of tyranny, that leads down to arbitrary decision making. There is some semblance of stuff that really happened out there. There's some semblance of truth. Now, getting to it's tough. You don't know where it is. You have to look for the evidence of what happened. Who's talking about it? What is their expertise? Are they talking about it in a case of authority? Is this debatable? Is this opinion? Is this something that we can measure? All of that stuff still matters for a free society. So when we come back, again, things you can do, things you should feel empowered to do, and how do we get to a better, more functioning libertarian society? Thanks again for joining us here on Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Are you interested in indoor target shooting? Or do you know someone interested in indoor target shooting? The Rochester Rifle Club has an indoor range in Brighton, New York. Shooting is with .22 caliber rifles, air guns, and pistols with reduced loads. We have leagues and open shooting times. For more information or for a membership application, go to our website at rochesterrifleclub.org. That's rochesterrifleclub.org.
Only available in the WISL store at WISL1040.com. Official top quality tees, hoodies, and coffee mugs depicting the colorful WISL logo or the already famous Mount Worstmore line of merch depicting Mount Rushmore style are for worst presidents. Of course, you know who is front and center up on that mountain. WISL official items make perfect gifts, or they're a great way for you to make a personal statement. Locally produced and sold only in the WISL store at WISL1040.com.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
All right, welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wills today. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Again, leave your comments online if you want to participate in the show. Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson page, or Kevin Wilson Twitter, wherever you are today. Appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate y'all participating in the show. We're talking about, how do we seek truth, and how do we build a more libertarian society on that premise. Again, so just to kind of recap some of the other stuff that I talked about is that I do still think that in most situations there is an objective truth, that there is, of course, many different perspectives on causes of events or consequences of events, or whether or not, it's good or bad, right? Those are all subjective stuff. Those are all opinions, but there is some truth out there. Sometimes either something works or it doesn't. And sometimes an event either happened or didn't happen. And going back to when I talked about at the beginning, like, if someone's going to make an extraordinary claim about an event that happened or didn't happen, they're going to have to provide evidence of that, and it's important to try to get to the root of what the actual truth of the situation is. There's both the objective facts and, again, the interpretation around those facts is important too. And be wary of anyone who works in politics trying to sell you an extraordinary claim, because even me, again, if I'm making a claim on this show, I would like to think y'all are going to be skeptical of it. I know some of y'all, because I hear from you. When I make claims about criminal justice reform, I always hear from you, and that's fair. Should be checked on that stuff, because it's a complicated issue with competing claims and competing sets of facts, but there is a set of facts out there related to criminal justice that is true. And trying to have a debate around that rather than what the actual facts are creates a better and healthier republic. And that's what we need to get to. And getting back to that fact, if we can start to agree on, like, here's how we evaluate what's actually true. Again, look for that evidence, look for who's gathering it and where and when and what their motivations are. Okay, so if we could do all that, if we can get to like some semblance of like, here's a set of facts that we can agree on, how do we interpret this to create better policy, to create a better society? We're in a good place. We're starting to lose that a little bit, though. Again, people are tribal in the sense that they will only accept facts that reinforce the tribal identity of their team or reinforce the evil nature of the opposing tribe. Like, look out for that stuff too, because if that's how you're motivating everything, if that's how you're evaluating everything, is that the other tribe is evil and my tribe is good and we can do no wrong in my group and the other group is purely motivated by evil, that's not how most people work. Most people think they're doing good, and they can do extraordinarily evil things when trying to do good. Again, don't get me wrong. There's that great C.S. Lewis quote that says, "Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive." Like there's that one, right? Like there's bad stuff that can go on when, like, the Soviet Union thought it was doing good stuff. A lot of them did, but man, they did just awful, evil stuff in the pursuit of what they thought was the greater good. Look out for that stuff. But most people, that's not how most people are operating, though. Not even operating at that. They think they're doing good on that level. So if you can agree on a set of facts, you agree you can operate in good faith. Not everyone's going to do this. Some people can operate in bad faith. I get that. But if you can figure out, what's a way that we can get to objective truth and debate those ideas, that's a good thing. And once you've set that up, once you accept that most people are going to try to operate in a good way, that they're not going to, most people, there's exceptions, whatever, 5% of the population, whatever it is, are going to do things to hurt people. They're either unwell or unscrupulous or whatever, but most people are going to operate in good faith. And you create controls to say that, like, okay, well, if you're going to exercise power over other people, you have limitations on that. We start to move towards a libertarian society that we don't need the government to come in and intervene in every single situation, because most people are good and they're going to operate together in good faith. And we have technology and in different methods of trying to discern the truth, whether that's in a business sense or in any other sense. We have rules in place, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. We can build a society that operates on freedom because we don't need to control that. And that's the nature of how tyrannical societies end up getting built, is that you start to assume that everyone is operating bad, that everyone's operating in bad faith, that everyone's evil, that the other side isn't telling the truth, never ever. They're not just people, they are a bad group that is out to hurt you. It's not always that way. It's usually not that way. It can be, but it's usually not that way. And you start to build a government around fighting those folks, around suppressing that evil, around controlling that assumption about certain populations of people. You can end up with a really tyrannical situation that ends up oppressing you in turn. That's how we get to some of those brutal dictatorial governments, is just by doing that. It's by assuming that most people are evil and need to be controlled. Again, if you get to, and that's your mindset too, it's wild to think this way, because if that's your mindset, if you think most people are evil, what happens with the folks who end up in government? When you get into powers, is your side all made of good people too? Is it really? No, again, if you're operating with that mindset, and I don't accept that premise, but if you're operating with that mindset, then you might as well have no government at all, because there's too great of a chance of some evil person getting in and exercising that power. And I'm fine with that precaution, right? And I know people who think that way. And that to me is the only acceptable compromise. Either people are good and they're able to operate independently and on their own, and we can, again, have ways of verifying the truth that don't require some higher authority to confirm for us, the state or whatever else. We can do these things on our own, that we can find objective truth on our own. If we can do all those things, then why do we need the state to regulate most of our lives? Why do we need to do that? We don't. But if you're coming at that with the opposite assumption too, that people are usually bad, and therefore we need a state to prevent the war of all against all, well, how do you know that the good people are going to be in charge? You don't. If most people are bad, there's a better than even chance that the bad people are going to be in charge, and you don't want those folks in power exercising control over your life, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to run our lives. They don't, they don't have good intentions when they're doing things. Again, I don't believe that, but if you're going to do that, the argument to me goes that, well, we ought to have a smaller state, a freer society. Again, I accept that there are some bad folks out there, and that they're folks who are going to hurt people and take other stuff and lie and cheat and defraud. But most of those folks are in the minority. And the best thing that we can do to preserve a free society is to equip ourselves personally, with better tools to be able to look out and understand and evaluate the situations where someone might not have good intentions. But again, in order to do that, we have to find ways of discerning truth. And if you get caught in that mindset of evidence not mattering, of accepting that only point of view matters, not the objective truth. Again, I don't mean to pick on my commenter who's wonderful and says a lot of really great, insightful things, but who says it commented Patricia on Facebook. Yes, Kevin's looking at everyone's point of view together and getting the bigger picture. Yeah, that can be part of it, right? Again, it's a matter of how do we combine all those things together to get to the capital T truth of these things. And so, I'll leave you with this. Again, I know I have a couple minutes left. I'm generally optimistic about society. Again, I think that most people are good. I think that if left to their own devices, we would be an even more successful society. But there is things to look out for. There's people who do have bad intentions sometimes. And my intent with this show is to just say, look out for the people who are, trying to be manipulative, who are trying to be untruthful, who are trying to just rally their tribe and not get to some essential truth. How do you evaluate what the information you're getting actually is, and how do we act on it effectively? Because there are good things that we can do. There are good things that we could do for our families, for our local communities, whether it's changing local laws around what can or ought to be built, around changing business licenses. It's not hopeless. And if you try to pursue things in this optimistic way, try to pursue things in a way where you assume that most folks are going to act in good faith, I think we will be more successful as a movement, as a liberty movement. And for all the concerns that I see out there, where people falling into conspiratorial thinking or postmodernist thinking, there's still a lot of good people out there who want to do things to make the world a better place. And if you engage with people who also are willing to act in good faith, then we can build a better society. We can build a more libertarian society. We can build a world that is more good, that accomplishes great things. And that's what I want to talk about on Wednesday. I want to talk about the good stuff going on. I want to talk about the positive stuff in society, and that despite all the negative stuff going on with government, with multi-trillion-dollar spending bills and injustice and all that, there are people doing good stuff. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We'll be back for our last show in this time spot on Wednesday. Have a great day, folks.